Hello and welcome to the Formless Flow-Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, business, and investing. And I should add in Flow-Driven CEO and VC podcast because it is becoming quite the show. Welcome all the listeners out there. Hope you are all having a wonderful week. Today, I'm welcoming to the show all the way from Berlin, and I will say all the way from Berlin because from Melbourne, Australia, it is quite the distance. Tobias Urban, welcome to the show, Tobias.
Welcome. Hey guys. Thanks for having me on the
Hello.
show. And yes, it's not around the corner, definitely. But we make
No.
it work.
We do make it work. I love Berlin. Do you know what I've been saying, Tobias? I've been saying to quite a few people, I've been traveling around the world a lot lately in 1 week. I'm going,
Hmm.
I'm traveling around the world, even though I'm not on the plane and not in the different places. I kind of feel like I am because I feel like I could just jump into your screen and be like, hey, let's go grab a coffee in Berlin. And there's a lot of different conversations and all the people I'm talking to. It is going
Exactly. I mean, you're actually visiting a few countries a week, right?
Yeah, I don't know which one's my favorite country. You've got a great backdrop there though going, and it does feel very Berlin. I have been to Berlin many moons ago, and I did love it there.
I mean, it does feel very Berlin. It's very drizzy. It's very gray right now. I mean, it shouldn't kind of represent what Berlin actually is, but it's right now for like kind of beginning of May. It's kind of cold, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. And you and your wife have a little newborn. She's Amber, 4 months old. How's that all going?
Tiny Amber is 4 months old. She's kind of performing quite well. She's actually keeping us quite busy, but also letting us sleep. So that's the biggest kind of upside of the whole story. But yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah,
Managing her and managing kind of the motivation for work is another challenge. But it's you have to groove yourself in, and and yeah, it's really dimension in terms of motivation and how you see the world and stuff. So it's it's amazing to see. It's a complete
awesome.
different role than I had, before. Just keeping track on your own terms and kind of keeping yourself busy. And now you will be kept busy. So that's not an
Yeah.
issue anymore.
Well, she decided the other week that we weren't doing our podcast, didn't she? Halfway. We
Exactly. She was like,
weren't
I'm
even
doing the
halfway
podcast
through.
now.
I think we're like 10 minutes through and you're like, gotta go. And I'm like, anything goes. It's totally fine. Anyway, so here we are.
Exactly.
Let's get on into it. We both have a fair bit in common. Your background is advertising, communications, as was mine. And when I met you quite a few weeks ago, we were like, oh my goodness, like, what was that transition like? We'll get into that in a second. Let's start
Yeah.
with you are the founder of W11 Network. You're a designer. I love this bit about your title. You're a tastemaker and investor operating at the intersection of branding, venture, and cultural relevance. Also important. Like I said, you have a background in advertising, and you transitioned into working closely with startups and investors, shaping how companies position, communicate, and differentiate in an increasingly competitive, and I'll also say somewhat beige market, just with AI
Yeah.
and everything that's happening. And you just called out a really interesting stat that we'll share shortly. So, like I
Yeah.
said, you're based in Berlin. Your work is a bridge between the founders and VCs, and it's helping translate vision into brands that not only resonates, it also secures attention, capital, and momentum. And through the W11 Network, it's a founder-led design studio. You support startups in building their brands that win rounds, generate tractions, and scale with clarity. And I will add into this how important story is. And you and I have talked about the craft and the authenticity around the story. So again, we
Yeah.
will talk about this. Your lens is especially relevant in this AI era where execution is becoming commoditized. It's becoming beige. What was that stat you shared? It was like 6. What did you say that you just read yesterday?
Yeah, so the OMR festival is happening in Hamburg. It's kind of the biggest and one of the biggest online marketing festivals in Europe, right? And they had the stat on the screen saying that kind of around 60% of the content we see on LinkedIn right now is generated by AI. So people generate their posts, people generate their videos, the imagery, everything kind of pops out is the half of it is generated by AI, which is you know insane because last year apparently was like over 100% less. So we're seeing the thing is, but our topic right is just came up a few months ago because the time really sped up so fast, how things kind of get released, new tools, new features, new heights are reached kind of in terms of AI. Last year was kind of the biggest thing was kind of to generate some text on ChatGPT,
Yeah,
you know?
prompting.
And now I'm prompting a whole website in like kind of 2 minutes, which is like 6 months later, which is insane. And this is kind of the same kind of pace we are living in right now, which is makes everything so much harder on the one hand, so much easier. And I actually never met someone in the last weeks who told me kind of they adopted AI into their business, but on the same time have much more time on their hands. So they still are working their 60 hours a week, but now enhanced with AI so they can actually fit more into the week than before, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, well,
Usually
it's
it
not meant to
should
do
take
that.
some,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
meant to do the opposite. Well, that's why you focus on what cannot be automated, and that's the human layer of taste, narrative, and cultural signal, and helping companies build moats that go beyond product alone. And when you booked
Mm.
into the pod, and I asked you what's one thing you wanted to share when it comes to shaping and shifting, in business and investing, you said AI is eliminating execution as a competitive, and I've just lost my notes. Don't you hate that? As a competitive advantage. So what are the new moats VCs should actually be looking for, Mark? After building 200 plus brands over the last decade, I'm seeing clear signals of what can't be automated and what will become the most expensive trade a company can have. Most investors aren't looking for it yet. Let's start there. I want to start
Yeah,
there.
definitely. Let's start with the headline.
Yeah.
The headline was kind of even the headline has changed. I mean, that's kind of how fast it is. And I would even change the headline since we first kind of this
Connected.
podcast in, right? I mean, it was kind of 2 months ago, and even since then, things have changed. Like, even like my point of view has changed. Probably it's more dramatic than it was 2 months ago. But it's so like you said, I work with founders, I work with VCs since 10 years now. Before I was in kind of advertising and learned what creativity is, learned the agency side, learned the client side. Back then it was completely different, right? I mean, back then we kind of had a pretty analog kind of
Yeah.
work. We kind of
And big
sat
budget.
down face to face and we talked about it, we idealized, we wrote it down, we kind of transcribed it later into digital briefs and stuff, and it took ages, and the momentum kind of got stretched, and we built these companies, we built these brands and advertisings and stuff. But now, when I transitioned into the startup world, obviously it got all faster, right? It was all more digital and more video meetings, and like kind of we have to be finished in 2 weeks and stuff. Okay, I love this actually. So this is why kind of I transitioned into this sector, because I think that this was kind of exactly what I was missing. Sometimes in advertising, things took a year or two to be kind of published. So
Mm.
in the startup sector, we now see ourselves as obviously a partner for founders to build their product, to build their idea, to build their brand. And VCs kind of were looking for execution speed. They were looking for modes that actually are tangible, so talent. They were looking for people who had experience in, let's say, if they want to build a software product, they looked for engineers. If they wanted to build a health product, they looked for doctors in the team. Now it changed because everybody has kind of this same tool set through AI. They have Claude, they have ChatGPT, they have Perplexity, they have huge amounts of knowledge and kind of research power, which leaves all the other kind of pitch decks, which are now 2 years old, completely behind. There was
Mm.
some kind of doctor who helped a health startup to kind of build their product, and they have some island knowledge in their niche, and they pitch that in and they help the startup to kind of raise money. Now you need one person who has a good idea, who doesn't need an engineer anymore, who doesn't need some kind of specialized person anymore, because they can get the knowledge in a
Yeah.
second at 2 a.m. in the morning on the couch, which is insane. I was always kind of running against the wall because I had this amazing idea at like 1 in the morning, and I was like, cool, I designed the product, I designed the brand, and then I wrote obviously on Slack my dev. And I mean, usually at 1 in the morning they were asleep, so I was kind of roadblocked and I couldn't go further. I couldn't explore my ideas. I couldn't develop it
Yeah.
and publish it. Now I can do it, and now I can sit kind of on the design and publish it in the same night, this is kind of no differentiation factor for VCs anymore because they know everybody is working with the same kind of tool set and they can build SaaS products, software products with Cloud Code, for example, which is revolutionary, obviously, and super innovative, but it also kills individual taste. It kills individual kind of uniqueness, which is kind of our topic today. So what are actually VCs looking for in startups, in teams to decide where they want to invest in? What differentiates these teams from each other?
What are they looking for? Like, what do you think they're looking for? Do you think they're because
I
and
think
the
right
reason I
now,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry, you go.
I think right now, one of the biggest modes is kind of scalability still, always has been. But now it's has been so much elevated with AI because you can build much faster. Before it was like the scalability of the product itself, but now it's the idea can be scaled so fast because you can iterate it so fast. You can pivot in a day. Before it
Yeah.
was like, no, we have to write a new business plan and we have to build a new product MVP, and the MVP took alone like 6 months to build. So kind of the accelerators had to finance pivots for months. They had to put like 50K in it and say, yeah, okay, pivot again. We believe in your team, but now you can kind of really pivot in a weekend. I
Yeah.
see kind of, yeah, you go.
You know what I find interesting though? Like this scalability and this pace, I'm seeing
Yeah.
less strategy and things being less strategic, and I'm seeing a lot of
Hmm.
more. I don't know about you. I'm seeing a lot more gaps, and I'm like, this could just end up being a one hit wonder in this AI revolution that we're in.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's a conversation I'm having with myself at the moment because I'm like, one minute I'm thinking I'm not fast enough or I'm not keeping up. And then on the other hand, I'm like, well, no, I need to be more intentional. I need to think this through. What's the, like we were talking just before the show around the narrative and the story arc, etc. And I'm just seeing a lot less strategic thinking. Like I was driving to a meeting today and there was talkback radio and they were talking about cognitive offload. And I don't know if you've heard this term, and it's all
Yeah.
around just have you heard the cognitive offload? I hadn't heard the offload term. I've obviously heard all the others, but like, and cognitive offload is you're not thinking, you're actually just
Yeah.
offloading it to AI. And so
Mm.
I actually am seeing a lot of that. I was like, when I heard the word, I was like, oh my goodness, I am seeing that at the moment in a lot of businesses and a lot of people I'm dealing with. And that's not
It's
the
a shame,
sleep.
right?
It's a real
Because
shame.
the
Yeah.
thought process has changed. People kind of iterated in their own head and wrote down their idea and slept on it. On the next day, they opened the same idea and was like, "What was I thinking? Maybe let's do it like this." People are not doing this anymore because
No.
they even kind of when they have to write an email, they open ChatGPT and kind of screenshot the email into it and say generate and reply. Which is there's no thought process in it at all. So why would they do it when building a business? So when you start at this already, so the fidelity is already pretty low, and then you go to kind of different topics and different challenges. So the bigger the challenge, the more use of AI probably, which is quite logical, but sad for the industry. 'Cause
Yeah.
what's missing is ideas, because even the ideas are generated by AI. People go on some kind of tool and say, "Hey, I need a business idea." Then they get 100 business ideas. They choose one and say, "Okay, build me a business plan." Then it builds a business plan, and then kind of so there are startups which come to us and they pitch me ideas, and you feel it when you ask like one question, it's easy. If you ask a second question, go deeper, the people start stumbling because they don't really have the deeper knowledge of the topic, because they thought it's scalable, it's easy to build with AI, let's pitch it, let's make some money, let's sell it in a year, which is now kind of the selling cycle also completely shifted. Before it was like you build an MVP, you get seed round. Yeah, so if everyone can execute at light speed, the thing is execution is no longer a mode. That's kind of our
Yeah.
main feeling right now in the whole startup VC sector. It's table stakes. It's kind of new mode is taste. which kind of is really funny because last 15 years, I tried to be getting faster at my job. Now kind of my job is not getting fast anymore because everyone's fast right now. So
Yeah.
what's the differentiator now, for also my work, obviously startups have a kind of much easier life now because all the paperwork is easy to do. You're registering your company, you just go through Claude and say, hey, give me the document to register my company and write me, I don't know, 2 pages about my company. That's super easy, which was kind of stuff you don't want to do, especially
No.
in Germany. The bureaucracy is so humongous, you don't want to do it because it
Yeah.
takes for ages. But now it's super easy, and founders' life probably has become easier and less bottlenecked, especially because you had to hire people to kind of reach certain stages. You had to hire a lawyer, which was a huge risk because it costed so much money.
Exactly.
Now it's suddenly I don't need a lawyer anymore. Yes, I need a lawyer to maybe finalize my document, and yes, I need a notary to maybe, register my company, but all these steps until the last kind of step for free and fun now because you can talk about it with Claude and you can make it nicer and you can just
Yeah.
export a PDF. Yeah. Yeah,
I've got
please.
questions on this because the speed piece, lack of strategy, and then the VCs and what they're looking for scale.
Hmm.
I've had various conversations with a number of people in VC, and I haven't had this one, so it's why I was always keen to catch up with
Yeah,
you
yeah.
on. And you're talking about execution, and taste is the most critical thing and important thing, and I completely agree with you. And taste requires strategic thinking. It requires slowing execution down to be more intentional, to be deliberate in what you're actually
Hmm.
building and what you're scaling. Is
Yeah.
this becoming a recipe for disaster though, or are we going to see VCs who are more in our thinking? Because I spoke to somebody the other night and he was talking about patient capital, and I hadn't heard the term patient capital before. And I love it because he was coming from a very different,
Yeah.
and yet he was talking about exactly what you're talking about here, and this need, rather than just go and build something at pace, work out what the customer needs, what's the problem you're trying to solve here.
Mm. I mean, that's exactly the thing. Nobody in venture capital ever calls you and says like, take your time. So this is the big thing that really changed because before they had kind of three startups doing exactly the same,
Uh,
approaching the VC, and then they said, hey, can we pitch? And the VC said, yeah, pitch. All the three kind of VC startup pitched, and after the pitch, that was actually the race. So the faster they could answer their questions, the faster they could come up with a term sheet, the faster they come up with kind of an expectation of their next 6 months. And some startups were really fast and answered this kind of in a day with an email, and others took for weeks. And then after weeks, they get back to the VC and said, "Hey, now we finished." And the VC said, "Sorry, but we already invested in your competitor because they were just faster." And now this is kind of gone because people reply in like not a day and they reply like in an hour because their replies are kind of generated. And which is again really sad because kind of the innovation part of the job was the most fun, people which had good ideas, people were kind of driven and they were striving because they had such discipline in their ideas because they were so fired up because they had the idea and they were the fastest. And
yeah.
now it's a little, yeah, it's different. I mean, it's a real, you said like, so I always call it tastemaker era because the tastemaker era is kind of a really funny time where kind of my job is now I come into startups and they don't need kind of the usual things. They say, "Oh, we have no idea of WordPress. We need a website. Can you help us?" And this is not a problem anymore because they can just go to Lovable and build their own website in a minute. So this service fell away from our roster. So they came to us and said, "Yeah, we have problems with our logo. We have no idea how to export an SVG. This is not a problem anymore." So what's the actual problem? Why do they come to us? They come to us because they have too many options. They had no options before. They had no idea of design. They had no idea how to produce a brand. They had no idea how to kind of build these kind of steps and a brand book and what's kind of responsiveness and what is UX. I have no idea what UX is. And they asked me this in the course. So we have the big advantage of having knowledge that they actually never heard of. And now they can just ask it away. They can build their logo on Claude Design. They can, so this is what my job is now is kind of coming in and deciding on the options they have. Sometimes we produce the options, sometimes they produce the options. So it's a complete different game.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. So you're almost like you're almost like a brand custodian, and you're almost
Yeah, exactly.
like, do you remember, like, I think about the brand custodian, and then you're also
Yeah.
and also almost, and then you're also like, you're a creator. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I mean,
wild.
the thing is kind of my job is knowing which one is right, so which one fits the target audience, which one will get you the interview with a VC, and having the conviction to kill all the other kind of 999 ideas. So this is kind of was actually my job before as well, but I had to kill my own thousand
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
But now I have to kill their ideas because they come up to me and say, "Hey, we already have like kind of 6 different website ideas drafted up, ready to go. We just have to have someone who tells us this will work, this will not work." Because the
Mm,
one thing that kind of AI right now, and this is kind of I put it in brackets right now because I'm
it
not sure if
changes.
this holds up for the next 6 months. Beginning of the year, I was kind of very sure that this wasn't changing for the next 2 years, but now I reduced the time to like 6 months. So the only thing I think AI can replace right now is kind of make the decision what is right.
It
It can give
can't or
you,
it can?
it can't.
No, I don't think it ever will, and I think that comes back to, like, from a leader perspective, like, if, that comes back to this cognitive offloading, like,
Yeah.
and this is why there is so much indecisiveness right now, because if we're expecting the machines to make the decisions for us, they can't, and they never will. Like, it comes back to a human understanding the meaning behind everything, and then going, what is the right decision for the business, or what is the right decision for the brand? What is going to address the problem that we need to solve for the customer? A
And also,
machine
right,
can't. Yeah.
probably you heard it more than me now in your chats with kind of people from the VC world. On their side, on the VC side, uh, their work also changes drastically. They could just check so many pitch decks in a week because it was kind of manually. They
Mm.
had to flick through them, they had to kind of decide and kind
Now
of
they can just
now
so much.
they kind of, yeah, exactly. So now the amount of pitch decks they are looking at is just like probably 3 or 5 times as much as
Yeah.
before. So what does this change on kind of the other side of what's cool and what's not, and who do they invite to the pitch and who do they not invite to the pitch? So maybe they really interesting people fall off the wagon because they are not as fast, not as shiny, not as, but they probably are the ones who really are into the topic and would build an amazing business.
Yeah. I actually think we're in an interesting time. In, like, it's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur as
Mm,
such, or just starting a
it is.
business.
Yeah, yeah.
However, there's also, just like you said, the word shiny. There's so many shiny businesses, ideas out there. You've seen them, I've seen them, and you're kind of like, how long is this going to last for? And
Yeah.
there's all, like, we haven't even seen, like, the latest in technology yet, like, in terms of this AI revolution. Like, I was having a meeting today with an old client of mine, and he's also a great business mentor, and
Mm,
he was talking to me about quantum computing. And then he was talking about, he doesn't see this any different. His background is in technology and operations. He's like, this is no real different be to when the internet came in. Roles
true.
change, people's job. Like, he said, wait till quantum computing really
Yeah.
takes scale.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's really interesting, because I was talking to him today around, businesses and what I'm seeing, and he invests as well, and we were talking around expectations. I also just feel like right now what's missing is the story behind the business, the
Yeah.
brand, the
Yeah.
founder. seeing that, especially with your background? And I've been getting a little bit of pushback. I've had a couple of
Yeah,
startups saying that's not what VCs are looking for. That's not what the investors are looking for. They want to see the numbers. They want to see this and they want to see that. And I'm like, yeah, that's not the full picture. That's not the full the full
it's funny
story.
you say that. It's funny you say that because actually, what I had in the last weeks, I saw the following thing, with founders. We start the project. Usually, they uh, hate the part where it went into story, the narrative and build a persona, and it's very text heavy, right? So, and this was obviously the step they would love to skip. They would kind
Yeah,
of come in and say, "Yeah, okay, you do it, and you decide, and you build a story, and we just say which is nice and which not." But the founders have to build the story because it's their business, it's their baby, it's their
exactly.
idea. So funny enough, the last years, this was kind of the least liked topic in our whole process. So we had to kind of push them always and, hey, have you done this? Can you check? Can you do this? Can you write this up? So we had to follow up a lot to get this going. And this is kind of the most important part because this is the
Oh,
kind of
I'm in.
gist where we take our kind of creativity from, because we see these little details in their story, in their founder story, in their kind of, I don't know, in their childhood because they saw, I don't know. So we took this out, and this is why we built amazing brands in the last years. And now things completely change again because they come before they even had the first meeting with us. They have pages on pages and pages of kind of memos about their brand vision and their kind of story, and they have 5 different outcomes and archetypes and stuff like this. And they come to me and they overload us with loads of text, and they say, this is our brand book and voice book and tonality and stuff. And we have to kind of now climb through massive amounts of pages,
Really?
which is on the one hand okay, because we can also summarize it with AI and get our
Do it
idea of
fast. Yeah.
what actually. But this changed because this is also again was something which had to be done on their own time. They had to cut time in their schedule to sit down and think about their own kind of original story and stuff like this. So this also kind of generated new ideas and kind of reflected on their own past and their ideas. And so this is exactly this cognitive offload which is missing also in this part, which is fun because now we can always say, yeah, the narrative and the story is not a problem anymore, but it's actually that the people haven't written it themselves, so they actually don't
No.
know what.
That's exactly, and so I've been playing with identity. It's identity, right? Like, it's an identity
Mm,
piece that's missing. I think
mm, mm.
brand identity, founder identity, business identity.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think with VCs and investors, yes, it's all, the commercial aspect of it. With a story though, you can get a better commercial outcome. You can get absolutely can get a better, get better investments, better investors, more.
yeah.
I just think that we're undervaluing right now the importance of this and the importance, like you say, of taste. And I think we're at a really critical point here. Like, and if we're not careful, everything is going to be beige,
Yeah,
and
and
we're
it's
going to
so it's so it's
same
so
old, same old.
it's you see companies that are investing. I mean, AI companies now have huge buckets of budget again, and they use that. Some of them use it actually really nicely. There's, for example, they invest into campaigning again, which like ad campaigns, which is
Yeah, I was going to ask
hasn't
you.
been seen before in the last 10, 15 years. That's startups or slash scale ups, because you have to call them scale ups after 6 months because they have kind of 500 million ARR suddenly, so they're massive companies with like 300 people working with them in 3 offices after like 6 months. But they have the buckets to actually invest into their story.
Yeah,
And maybe you see the example of, yeah, you saw it in the last weeks of kind of Jude Law, being the face for Legora, which is a massive story piece, which is a massive kind of brand building, brand identity
yeah,
effort, and which actually hasn't been really done in the last years because there were SaaS products and very unsexy products. Nobody wanted to be the face of, I don't
No.
know, some kind of SaaS product. But now kind of Ligora made it happen. Lovable is going to this direction, being like very, story heavy and founder story heavy, and kind of people like kids are building and they're showing videos of kind of how easy it is.
Yeah.
And this is kind of definitely the way it should go. So AI is doing something good, definitely, to make it happen that this can kind of can be produced faster and cheaper than before. An ad campaign in this kind of size with Jude Law would have cost so much more like 10 years
Yeah.
ago. But it's fun, so there are startups which are doing it the right way, and they are investing into story, they're investing into brand. They see brand kind of as a luxury good, so they wanna invest into the brand, and they hire big agencies. They spend really a lot of money on it to make the brand look human.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a trend I see, that AI companies invest much more into brand than comparable SaaS product companies 5 years ago, because they have to have this kind of differentiation factor because they have an invisible product.
Yeah.
The product
Yeah.
isn't really tangible.
So
So yes, it's
do you
yeah.
see a creative renaissance then? Like in terms of like, I want to ask you a little bit about the transition, because you did ask me that a couple of months ago when we caught up. You said, what was that
Mm,
transition like for you out of advertising?
yeah.
And I said, it's been tough. And you said, yeah, it was really tough. And yet you found your sweet spot in terms of, and I feel like I'm finally finding my sweet spot, because I completely walked away from it. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, actually, there's so much I love. I would not go back into advertising as we know it. And that's not shitting on advertising as such. It's just that I've evolved and I've got new
Yeah.
skills, and I really like this startup, scaling up space. And it feels like the world of brand and
It is.
strategy, and it feels right for me and where I am. Do you think with everything that's happening right now, do you think we're going to see, like with Claude design and all this sort of stuff and what AI is capable of,
Mm.
do you think we're hitting a creative renaissance as part of this, and that we are going to be more focusing on what we need to get back to focusing on? Or do you think we're still going to go into even more into a sea of beige before, people and businesses and founders and brands or businesses wake up and go, what's happened? Because I feel
Yeah, I
like, yeah, you go.
think it must have this renaissance effect, because um, the the biggest problem is people are getting bored of new inventions pretty fast nowadays, because new stuff comes up. And then you said quantum computing is commercializing, so then AI will be old news.
Yeah.
Language models will be old news. ChatGPT is already kind of old news. Yes, it's more profitable probably than Anthropic, and maybe has collected bigger rounds and more variation. But Claude came onto the scene, like properly commercialized on the scene a few months ago. Yes, it was there a few years,
Yeah.
but it came onto the scene, so people just saw there's something new, and they opened Claude. It looked kind of the
It's
same, but a little different, and they said, "Wow, Cloud is so much better,"
it's
which
so
was
true.
exactly the same as ChatGPT. Yes, now they have features with kind of interactive graphs and kind of build a preview as HTML and stuff, which is nice, which is better than ChatGPT. I use Claude, for example, much more than ChatGPT now. But then Claude Design came up, and Claude Design completely changed something. It didn't change the whole game. Yes, people are now able to design their own funding announcement videos for LinkedIn. Yes. Does it look good? Maybe.
I'm sticking with Sigma.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yes, it makes life easier in showing your ideas, in showing your ideas fast to make your head kind of
What's
pop out
dopamine?
ideas. Huh? Sorry?
It's a dopamine as well.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah, it's
dopamine, it's like,
definitely it is.
yeah,
It makes you really addictive. I'm
yeah,
sitting sometimes there and I'm just bumping off ideas and like this is cool. This is actually really cool because sometimes you don't have someone to talk about it
yeah,
who is
yeah.
in your kind of topic as you are. But this is so funny because you can say so much bad about the AI revolution, but you can say so much good about the AI revolution
Yeah.
as well. At the same time, it's the same as you said as an example when kind of the internet came up. People were saying, "Wow, this is the worst that could happen to humanity." On the other side, it was probably one of the best inventions for humanity. So medicine and all the
Yeah.
research and communication between countries and stuff. But the same with is happening now. It does some good, but it does also some very uh, yeah, drastic changes on how we see culture also, how we kind of perceive music. This could be AI generated, nobody knows. Art, this could be AI generated, nobody knows. Which is sad, which is really sad because I think this
Yeah.
is the one good humans had to produce creative output, because this artist was better than the other artist because he could kind of draw better or he just had the better idea, but like out of
Mm.
his head, not out of his
I was about to
computer.
say, yeah, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. How does W11 Network continue to, and this isn't like, this is just a like, this is a general question, right? Because I'm thinking about this
Yeah.
with being formless at the moment also. Like, there's
Yeah.
part of me that like is purposely slowing down right now and just observing and watching things. And like you were just talking about Claude, and I'm watching on the daily chat, and then Claude comes out with something, and our chat's coming out. It's like this
Mm,
competition. Like if you actually stand
mm,
back and have an and just objectively watch things, you can just see what's playing out here. And I'm also doing that a little bit with my own business in terms of just observing and looking at, not jumping on the next shiny thing, and
mm,
going, what is actually required, and what do my clients need, or where's the opportunities, versus just jumping at everything and anything, and being very intentional and strategic around what my next move is. So for the first
mm.
time ever, I probably am being a lot more patient because I am slowing it down to go, actually
Yeah.
be like a panther, right? Prey, like being strategic, like in the jungle sort of thing. That's kind of my whole kind of,
Mm. Yeah, because
um
there are so many options, so you kind of have
yeah, yeah,
you can overlook it and think
yeah,
about like when am I actually taking action,
yeah,
As before, you were kind of scouting and scouting and scouting, and kind of you took every chance you could get because you didn't know that some other chance comes around the corner that fast. But now things are almost too fast to kind
yeah,
of catch them. They're so fast that they kind of slip through your hands. And you asked how we at W11 are kind of changing the way, and we kind of changed the way in terms of our process completely changed. So before we
mm,
kind of scouted inbound and outbound, but now we get so much inbound because the bottleneck of understanding what the problem actually is got erased. Like I said before, the people did not know anything about design, product, and how things work. Now they know because they can just ask, not us. They ask Claude, for example, and they just come to us with a task, not a question. So our business a few years back was a typical kind of venture studio. We built the startups, we invested into the startups. Sometimes we did both, we invested and
yeah,
built the startups.
yeah,
Now, yeah, I mean, back then we had a team, many kind of different skill sets, UX, UI, strategy,
all of
investment and
it.
stuff. Now we kind of have isolated taste makers that also invest into your company if they think it's the right idea. So we
Yeah.
have a few people who do all of the same work. So we don't have to build any style guides anymore. We don't have to build kind of Figma, whatever, UI dashboards. So kind of our work really went back to being a creative that also invests. So we
Oh,
kind
I
of
like it.
yeah, so we meet startups. They are teams. I mean, when we meet them, they're mostly kind of teams that kind
Yeah.
of got together and said, "Hey, we have some money on the side. We want to build the product, and then can you help us build the brand?" And this kind of process is really, like I said, a luxury kind of thing you do as a startup right now because you have to invest quite I mean, you have to be very precise on what you want because the whole cycle is so fast. So startups back then, they took months of brand
Yeah,
work
now
and
it's not.
built their business model and got their first seed investment. And until they launched their first real product, commercial product, it took sometimes 2 years or something, you know?
Yeah,
And now they come to us before they even launch their product. They have investment, they have a team. Everything is done in like 3 months, and our work got even faster. I mean, we thought we were fast when we say we are done in 3 weeks. Now we kind of are done kind of in a week or two, you know, sometimes, because we just have to decide on what option is the right one. So yeah, and also the investing is different, you know, because now I see um, that people in design, people in product are not a bottleneck anymore. So they don't need them in their team. They just need one founder at least that knows their shit, you know,
yeah.
and kind of knows how to use all these nice tools we have now. And if they do that, and if they see the founder has spent hours of time on how to use Claude design, on how to use Claude code, I might invest in them because I know they could build it on their own without anyone
Oh my
else. And
gosh,
this
so
is
crazy.
this kind of the mode we were talking about from the beginning, you know.
Scalability.
If I see that, kind of that was kind of tech was the mode before. Tech was kind of if you have good engineers, I'm going to invest in
Yeah,
you because you're going to build the nicest
yeah.
and most like product. Now, if you kind of know how to use the AI tools, well, this is my new mode how I invest. Kind of if I see that in someone, I say, okay, I trust you. You
God.
will build it in 2 months.
I've got
Yeah,
a couple of final questions for you. I'm gonna have to do a part two with you at some point. We're gonna catch up again in a
yeah,
few months. I'm
definitely.
I'm playing with panels and things like that, and just getting some
Yeah,
different. You've talked about humanity a little bit, and I've talked about the human piece, and I actually put something up on LinkedIn today, and I just took a photo of the person I was with today, and just said you can't underestimate like I didn't use the power. I just said like relationships and connections, and so where I'm going with this is so much of this is being handed over to technology. And so what are you seeing then in like, even in the next few 6 months or so, like in terms of the role of like what is the role of the human in all of this? What are you seeing that they need to be doing more of, and doing more of to impact the scalability or building of the business, and what should they be doing
it's
less of?
I think it's one word. It's just curation. So we kind of curate. That's the only that's the only job kind of we have right
Yeah,
now to curate the use. First, kind of obviously the output. We have to curate the output of AI,
yeah,
yes, but we also have to curate the use of AI. Where when you start at education, so how early should kids kind of get in touch with
yeah,
AI, you know? Because they
yeah,
have to learn their own discipline on
yeah,
wanting to learn this and even to
yeah,
fail and even to not find the right knowledge, you know, in books or in, I don't know, websites. When they have the access to AI, they lose motivation to do the work on your own, you know, I think. Because
yes. This is
when we
oh, go
kind of grew up, we had to actually research, you know, and for example, naming a company was an actual sprint, you know, for weeks. You know, we had to kind
I
of
love it. I
come up
know.
with like methodology of Greek gods to kind of, and then we jumped into to the topic, and we had like we were so proud that we found like 5 names that fit the kind of product, you know, and then obviously the patent lawyer killed them all because
Yeah, totally. I know.
obviously, but you know, this is kind of you asked what humanity should do. Humanity should take a step back and curate what's actually necessary on where to use AI because it's so
Yeah,
precious. This is super intelligence, you know, which is we have to be very careful on how to use it and not to destroy our own cultural things we you know we love to
yeah,
go
yeah,
to
yeah.
exhibitions, we love to go to kind of
Yeah,
you know to concerts, to to what people have created with their own minds. If we kill that, we will never go to anything like this
No.
anymore, you know?
And, it's funny, Berlin is I went there when I was like 20, gosh, 28 years ago. I'm 48, 20,
Hmm.
20, I might have been 26. And it is
Yeah,
one place that I just got such a vibe culturally from,
it is.
like, so I'm a massive believer in that too. And I think that, for all the listeners out there, what you're talking about around curation and
Mm,
the space to be creative, just the space to explore, be curious.
yeah.
I think last time when little Amber cut us off, I did ask you where did W11 Network, the name, come from, and you did tell me the story. So can you just tell us again, please? Because
Yeah, sure. I was living in London for quite a while, and I just loved the kind of vibe that kind of the city gave me, right? I mean, I was coming from Germany, and I always, yeah, I'm a massive music head, so I always heard kind of Notting Hill in some song lyrics, and I saw obviously in kind of anime magazines that kind of Notting Hill is the spot where you want to be. And yeah, so I actually moved there, and the postcode I lived in was W11, which is, obviously the borough of Westminster and in London, and all the boroughs are kind of,
Yeah.
so W11 is the first part of the postcode. Actually, yeah, I lived in for a couple of years, and I loved it. And when I came back to Germany and I worked here and was headhunted away, and I was missing London so much that I kind of, I founded my own company, and my own company had to be named something, identified with myself. And I came to this idea that why not just name it after the postcode I so loved.
Love it.
And people had no idea. So and there was no company in that way. And so the patent lawyer didn't have a problem with my naming. So that was actually the idea behind it. Yeah. Yeah.
And network just talks around like the ability to communicate and
Yeah.
and
Yeah, to
network.
actually bring together kind of the different skill sets,
Yeah.
because we do design, but we also do kind of business. We have to know what actually financing rounds are. We have to know VCs. We have to know other partners.
Yeah.
So we brought the people together because founders need a network, right? I mean, without a network,
Totally.
there's nothing,
No,
So
I agree.
we kind of provided the network for the founders, and we still are. And W11 network is changing really fast, and it's yeah, I'm so excited to see what's gonna come in the next few weeks. Let's call it, I don't know, with all the tools, with all the changes, with all the founders build new products. It's everything, we see every day is so exciting. Also,
Yeah, I agree.
we have so many different startups and business models and founders who come in. It's really exciting to see what they can build and how young they are
Yeah,
and
and how much
how
you can
eager
play
they
a
are.
role in it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, because we have been chatting for a while now. This is what happens, we get
Hmm.
into this flow state and it's just bang, bang, bang.
Exactly.
Music and creativity. One bit I would love you to share with all the listeners who are feeling like they are currently lacking creativity, their mojo, like what would
Hmm.
be what would be a piece of music that you would encourage them, everyone here, including myself, to listen to when you're feeling like you need
I
some
think that's my
creative.
most favorite question.
I know,
Actually,
what's that I'm
because
asking?
so I mean, I was always asking, like waiting for this question.
Have someone
Music
ever asked you
piece.
this question?
I mean, no one ever asks about music, in
Oh, I
our
know.
space. And I love people because I first, when I meet people for the first time, the first thing I kind of try to ask them, what type of music do you guys listen? And to kind of identify where they are in culture, because if they say kind of, yeah, I love listening to Dua Lipa, yes, cool. But if people, name me kind of an artist which is underground and stuff, and I know that
Yeah.
people kind of are
Oh my god.
invested into culture
It's like that underground. Gosh, I love it.
right now, yeah. I mean, obviously the band Geese, as you know them,
What did you just say? What are they called? The
Geese.
bad, the geese.
Geese, yeah, yeah, plural of goose. If you talk about kind of cultural relevance, Geese kind of revamped the indie movement. Indie
Okay.
was dead, kind of pretty much. I was a big indie head, like kind of like 15 years ago, when bands like Libertine, Strokes, and stuff came up,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it was
Yep,
a
on the
massive,
group.
massive
Yep,
movement. It was an
yep,
amazing movement,
yep,
and then it
yep,
died down, probably also because of social media, because they weren't social media
yep.
perfectly shiny, you know. But Geese kind of made without any effort, they're just cool, you know. So, and
Okay.
this is what we
Awesome. That's really
miss.
cool.
It's not polished. It's definitely trashy. It's definitely indie. It's definitely rock and roll. And you have to watch the Brooklyn live performance of Geese on YouTube.
How do you spell that?
It gives you, it's plural of goose. Yeah, geese.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, they're
Awesome.
a very young indie band from the States, and they bring kind of back the indie feel to the whole thing. And this
Yeah.
is a lot of hype and trend you can learn from these guys because they're
Yeah.
very young and they are very popular now. And the singer, the lead singer, Cameron Winter, is he performed live alone as kind of a solo artist already in you know, in every
Incredible.
big newspaper. Loved it, and so yeah, check it out.
And
It's
it's
pretty
good for
good.
like indies, startups, entrepreneurs, like here we are.
Exactly. I even did a post on LinkedIn and compared kind of Geese to how they created an effortless trend
Oh,
without
really?
even
Okay.
wanting
I'll
to,
have
you
to
know,
read it.
and
Yeah, I love it.
yeah, so it's worth a
Amazing.
listen,
Oh my
definitely.
gosh, Tobias, what a great conversation. Thank you so much. How
Thanks
do
for
we
the
find out?
questions.
No, you're welcome. How do we find out more about W11 Network? How do we, yeah, well, I've obviously got your LinkedIn profile and everything. So how do we find out
Exactly.
more?
So we push out in the next weeks, we push out a lot of new ventures we built and we invested in. You obviously see everything on our website, w11network.com, and obviously on my personal LinkedIn and also W11 LinkedIn. And we are publishing quite a bit. So it's going to be very interesting. A lot of AI startups coming up your way, human touch, curated, a lot of taste in there, to be honest.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm going to
Cool.
keep an eye out for everything. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
I've had a
Yeah,
great
let's talk.
conversation.
Let's definitely do episode 2 of this.
Yeah,
So
for
much fun.
sure. Definitely. Thank you, Tobias. Have a great
Cool.
afternoon.
You
Thank
as
you.
well. Bye bye.